Hello guys, welcome to Bonquisitive Take. Today we are gonna actually do an end-to-end project, which is be very interesting, and I guess you can actually showcase this in your portfolio, and this would be a good experience to handle LLM or large language models as well. So what we will do today is basically build a chatbot, an intelligent chatbot from the scratch. And just so that you know, like if you are not living under a rock, so you already know what a chatbot is, right? So this is kind of a web application or an application where you basically chat, you basically provide some input, some text input, or it could be a media input, anything, and a bot automatically replies to you. So obviously, a system can be made which does nothing, but just randomly send you some response. But we want to build an intelligent app, and now with the advent of AI, it is very much possible, right? So let's start without much further ado. So I have opened my terminal, so I'll use Python, and apart from Python, whatever I will use, you can see that and you can follow along so that you can also build a chatbot along with me. Okay. So here I'm using a Windows machine, so I'm in command prompt. You can use terminal when you are using Linux or Mac OS system. Now, the first thing that we are going to do is create a virtual environment. So I have made other videos as well about why and how to make a virtual environment in Python. So usually the s- syntax is something like this: Python name, venv, and whatever the name of the virtual environment you want to make. So it could be like sorry, the screenshot, what do you mean? Yeah, okay. So it could be something like my or whatever name you want to basically provide to your environment. Okay. So I already have created an environment, and whether there is something or not, you can see using dir. So this is called demo environment, which is already there. So now we need to activate. So once you create a virtual environment, we need to activate this environment, right? So in Windows, you can just directly go inside this particular folder, demo environment. Then there's a folder called scripts, and then you can write activate, and it's activated. So how do you understand that a virtual environment has been activated? You see that the name of the environment comes before the prompt. So you then understand like, okay, I am now under this particular environment. Now, what are the packages that are installed in this environment? So this is the reason that we use virtual environments, right? Because we might need to use some uh, Python libraries which are very specific to that particular project, and we do not want it to intermix with other projects and the dependencies of those projects, right? So today we are gonna basically build a chatbot. So obviously we would need help of some of the Python libraries. And before we start, you can just write pip freeze to see all the libraries that are already installed inside this environment. So this environment already have a lot of these things created. So let me do one thing. Uh, let me start from the beginning so that like it becomes much easier for you. So either way, so the two or three environments that you would require is just, I would say, Streamlit. So Streamlit is something that we will use for building the UI, basically the user interface of the chatbot, and also to basically uh, keep the data of the session. Basically, we will use Streamlit. It's kind of a library which we use for dashboards and stuff. And apart from that, what we would need is basically an API for LLM. So what I've thought and what I guess one of the easier one to start with is Gemini by Google. And so we will do that. So we will use the Python SDK, and we will use the Gemini API. So since we will be using the API, we do not have to basically uh, download the whole model. So let's do one thing. So even if there are so many other libraries that are already installed, you won't actually require them. So don't worry if your virtual environment doesn't have any of these libraries. Okay, we will install all the libraries that we will require. So first, let's clear the screen with CLS. Okay, now we have a clear screen. Now, as I said, the first library, and this is also something that I need to tell. So you may not always remember the exact name of the library. It's always okay to basically go to Google and search for it. And usually search with PEEP, because PEEP is basically the PyPy project libraries. These are PEEP handles a lot of the dependencies and codependencies and everything. So it's good practice to basically install everything using PEEP. Okay, so first, what we need to do is let's see the Google Generative AI. So again, I'm mistakenly pressing this key. Okay, Google Generative AI PEEP. So if you open this Google Generative AI, you would see the link from PyPy. So this is usually the official PyPy project, and you see this is the comment PEEP install Google Generative AI. Let's copy it and let's paste this over here. Okay, so this is the first library that we are installing, Google Generative AI. So this is the Python SDK for using all the generative AI models. So generative AI models mostly use LLM. So generative AI means AI which can generate. It could be images, it could be text and everything. So LLMs are basically large language models which are primarily text focused, but now there are multimodal models that are coming in as well. Multimodal as in multimodality. So like audio input, text input, image input, everything can be done. And also for output as well, you can have a text or image or audio. Anyway, that's a small background. So you can see this is installing a lot of packages. So this is the thing. So if you actually install some of the main libraries that we are going to use, PEEP basically automatically finds all the codependent libraries or like other libraries that basically are needed to run that particular library. So it will automatically install all of them. Okay. And once you have the prompt back, you understand like it's done without any error. So you can see again, let's clear the screen. Okay, now we have installed Google Generative AI. You can search for Streamlit as well, but it's basically same. Usually it's just pip install Streamlit, but still let's just search for the sake of it. You could also go to the official documentation, by the way. You have seen like the first choice was the official documentation, but yeah. And by the way, another info for all of you guys who are new to this kind of building. So usually all these projects, all these libraries, they have versions, right? And these versions gets updated time to time. If you do not mention any version, like if I just do pip install Streamlit, it directly install the most latest version. So if you are just looking for the most recent version, you do not need to provide any version. If you're looking for a very specific version, say for example, instead of 1.36.0, I'm looking for something like 1.30 or 1.25. In that scenario, I have to mention that particular version. So, and you can do that from release history as well. Like you can see like, okay, what are the versions that came out? And you, based on that, you can like say 1.35 or 1.34, all these things, right? But we won't do that. We will be installing all the latest libraries. So we'll just copy this pip install Streamlit. Again, go back here and uh, install this. Just press enter and Streamlit will be installed. So these are the two main libraries, the Google Generative AI and Streamlit that we will actually require. There's one thing that we can do. So obviously, when we are going to use API, such like for this particular LLM, the Gemini one, which will basically make our chatbot intelligent. So this API, these are very secret, right? These API is just only for you, and so we need to handle it with care. You shouldn't actually expose this API in public, so that like if you expose them in public, so anybody can use your account's API to basically build their own project. So you do not want that. You do not want, because API, though we will use a free API today, but even then there would be rate limits and stuff like that probably later on. If you are actually building a paid project where you want a higher rate limit, higher token limit, you might want to migrate to a paid API. And in those scenarios, basically when you are using a paid API, obviously you are paying for the usage, right? So you do not want that to be exposed to the general public. So that's why what we will do is also learn how to handle this kind of scenarios, like these API keys, and there could be other stuff as well which you do not may not want people to know. So those things will not be in the code directly. They will be in an environment file, which is a very standard practice of including some secret variables, right? And for that, we need to install another library. So it can be actually handled in other ways as well, but using a .env file or environment file is a standard practice that we are gonna follow. Okay, so it's still installing the Streamlit one. So let's wait a couple of seconds as well. So once we finish up with this installation, what we will do, and let's actually do search that as well. So the library that I'm thinking of using is something called .n, Python .n. Uh, let's see, yeah, .n, Python .n. So this basically helps uh, read, and you can actually like go through all these project notes, release notes to understand how it works and everything. So as you can see, like .n reads key value pairs from a .env file, can set them as environment variables. So this is what we are going to use. So all the secret variables like API key, in our case, it will be only the API key and nothing else. So that API key will be set, will keep that in .env file. And usually what happens is when you share your code with anywhere, like if you want to share the code publicly, that is also possible, but you don't just actually expose the .env file. You just provide the normal Python code that people use, right? So this is how you keep your secrets safe, basically. So let's see whether it happened. Yeah, so it's already done. So now we need to install the pip install python.m. So this is the last library. So this is not like a mandatory thing, but since we are going to use an API key, so it's better to use something like python.n. And yeah, it shouldn't also take much time, and it's done. Great. Now what we will do, now we will start coding, which is the exciting stuff. And before we start coding, let's do something. So let's open a Visual Studio Code. So you can use any code editor you want. I usually prefer Visual Studio Code. So to run it from here, you can just write code and dot means basically the recent folder where I am currently, and it should open the Visual Studio Code for me. Okay. So it opened, it's showing release notes, stuff like that. Let's cut out. And you can see here, so I am in the demo folder where I was in the terminal, right? So because I said code dot, so that's why it opened up in the recent folder itself. Now here, you can see the demo env file, which has all these libraries we installed. We won't touch that. Outside of that, let's create a file. So this is the file that we are going to use. So let's name it app.py. Remember to give the extension name .py because it's a Python file, and we are inside app.py. Okay, let's make it a slightly bigger. Yep. Okay. So now we need to write the code. So how do we start? First of all, in such scenarios, what we need to make sure is we have to basically import all the modules, all the libraries that are required. And what are we are going to do? What we need to do is just think about all the logic that needs to go there for a chatbot. A chatbot, it needs to have a UI, first of all, right? So there has to be a user interface. And what will be there in the user interface? So in the user interface, basically, we will have a place where the user, it could be you, me, anyone, the user could actually provide some text input. So he can write some text, that's the UI. And then once you write the text, you can press enter or like click a button to send that text. And then there will be the bot's response that is going to come. Okay, so this is how it should flow. So let's start with some import. So basically import means we will import all the libraries that are required. Import OS. Uh, so OS would be required to work with operating system. So that's why you import OS. Then import .env. So the .env file, python.env that we did, we just need one specific method from that, one specific method or function from that, which is called load.env, right? So from .env import. So we do not need to like import the whole .env, but we can just import one particular function, uh, load.env. Yeah, and then we need to import the Google generative AI, Google dot generative AI, and let's call it, since it's a mouthful of a name, let's call it something like Gen AI. Okay, and then do we need anything? Obviously, yeah, the Streamlit one. So import Streamlit as well. I also call it something like ST. So ST is usually a short form. So when we write something like as, so basically this is a short form that we can call later on to mean this particular library. Okay. So I think we are done with most of the stuff. Now what we need to do, let's write a comment, load environment variable. So here, what would be the environment variable here? It's the API key. So how do you get the API key? That's a big question, right? So what you can do, let's again go back to the browser, and you can go, so for Google Gemini, you can actually go to Google AI Studio. If you search for Google AI Studio, you should come to somewhere like ai.google.dev, something like this. And if you open this up, you get to see this, get started with the Gemini API, right? So this is what we want to do. And here you can see like there's an option of getting the Gemini API key as well. Why I'm using, so there are other LLMs as well. So apart from Gemini, there's obviously the OpenAI. From OpenAI, you have GPT, GPT-4, GPT 3.5. There are multiple versions. Similarly, Gemini also has multiple versions, Gemini 1.5, Flash, Gemini 1.5 Pro. There are some other ones as well, older ones. So, and these are just the top of the shelf, right? There are so many other LLMs that are present right now, and you have to basically, what we are doing here is using an API. So you need to basically keep a mind of that, because API means I'm just calling that particular endpoint, right? We do not have to download the whole model, because usually these LLM models are very big. So API has its own, I would say, like usefulness, right? Because if you basically download the model, you have to load that particular model during inference. That is when the model needs to predict anything. And loading those big models can be very resource intensive. So you may or may not have all the like computing power. You may not have a very strong PC or laptop to basically begin with. So that's why APIs are very simpler, because the model is hosted somewhere else. They just exposed an endpoint that is like, you can see, right, in even this particular application, you see ai.google.dev slash AI Studio. So this is like a something, an endpoint that is being exposed, that when you are calling this slash AI Studio, you get to see this page. So this is the same thing with the Gemini, any API. So we will make use of API, and if you can sign into the Google AI Studio with your Google account, and if you go to get a Gemini API key, you should be able to get one. So before the call, I have already created an API key, and you can just click over here. So create an API key as well. Okay. So once you actually have created this API key, now what we need to do is write that API key in the environment variable. So go again to the folder structure here. You can go via the Explorer in Visual Studio Code and write another file which we name just .env, and that's it. .env, and we can write the name Gemini API key, and you can just write the API key over here. So I'm not going to write the API key again. You also shouldn't expose the API key in somewhere, right? So now I'll pause. I'll write this out. I will cut the video, cut the part where I'm writing this particular API key, and that's it. So what you will do is just write the API key in your .env file here, like what I showed. Like you will give a name, Gemini API key. You will give a name, and then you will just define like Gemini API key equals to this, right? Okay, now let's pause for a couple of seconds. Okay, I'm back now. So yeah, so I have written my API key in .env file, and I've saved it. So always remember to save the .env file. Just Control S, I just save. And now let's go back to our app.py. So now our .env file already has the API key, right? So now how do we actually load that? So as I did wrote in the comment, we are gonna load the environment variable. So first, what we will do is call this load.env function. So you remember this load.env function that we did. So just write that function. We'll call it just like that and nothing else. And then we will define the API key here. Say Gemini API key. So this is the name, or we can just write API key here so that you are not confused. So API key is how we are calling it in this particular script, right? And now what we would do is OS. So here we will make use of OS, and we will do get env function, and inside this, whatever name you have provided in this .env file. So you remember, like I said, like we are gonna name the API key something like Gemini API key equals to. So that particular name you need to provide over here. So we have provided Gemini. Make sure your all the spellings and everything is correct. So you will just write the name here. So what we are doing, we are just getting the environment value. So this is was the key, and the value was already provided in the .env file, right? So we are just getting that particular value without exposing it. So that's all that we need to do. We are not actually writing that the actual value, the actual API key. We are just calling the name. That's all, right? So this is a crucial thing to remember, and this you can use in multiple like many aspects in software development where you do not want to expose something and it's just a variable. Usually it's just secret variables. It could be your database credentials that you may not want to share. So all those things that you do not want to share, you can write it in a separate .env file and load it from there like this. Okay, now we are done with this. Now we have to configure the model, the GenAI model. And so you, as I said, like you do not have to remember each and everything, right? So it's not like if you do not remember something, something will happen. You can always search in Google. So if you go into Google AI Studio again, so Google AI Studio, what it does, like if you just click on Google AI Studio and uh, create a new prompt or create a new chat, you'd see like you already have a chatbot which Google provides. But now we do not want that. We want to basically build our own, right? But you can just click on get code to get some help as well, which also does something like this, right? If you see here, so they use os.environment something to get the environment key, and then they again they are doing something similar, import google.generative AI as GenAI, and then they are actually using a generation config. So what you may see here, and obviously if you use some other language like JavaScript or Swift or Android, Kotlin, you can use those. So we are using Python, and you basically see how to use this API. Basically, what you are seeing here is how to use the API to generate something, right? So after importing, you basically configure it with the API key. So we will need to configure that, and then we create the model with a particular generation config. So let's do that. Let's first configure it. So we can say GenAI dot configure, same as what they did, uh, and it has a thing called API key, which is again API key. So we need to basically provide the API key to authenticate our API, right? So that Google knows like, okay, we have already created an API from their end, so this is validated in a way. Okay. Now once I have done this, let's also put comments. So always remember to put comments so that you yourself understand what you are trying to do. Just write model configuration. Write something that you understand, and sometimes what happens, you share the code with someone else, so they also need to understand what you have done, right? So model configuration, gna.configure, then there's the JSON that they have done, right? Yeah, so these are all parameters. You may not even need to worry about them, so you can just like copy paste it as well. So these are all parameters that are required to or you can say like they can be used to tune the performance of the LLM. But yeah, it's right now we are basically trying to build something basic, and it's okay if we do not change this thing. So they have already provided an example, and we can just use this here. generation config equals to that. Now what we can do is actually configure the model itself. So let's say model, and here we will use GenAI dot generative model, generative model, and then first of all, what we need to do is give a model name. So as I said, what are the models available, and you can also see this here as well. So if I just cut it out, so so this is how it's also done. This is the step that we are doing right now, the GenAI dot generative model. And if you see here, there are obviously many more models than that, but Gemini 1.5 Pro is pretty good, and 1.5 Flash is the most latest one. So it's basically a slight improvement of 1.5 Pro, which is like more efficient and more fast. So we are gonna use Gemini 1.5 Flash here, right? And if you just select Flash and actually goes to the get code, they already like say what's the model name need to be, right? So Gemini 1.5 Flash. Again, something that you can directly copy and paste. Uh, Gemini 1.5 Flash. Okay, now generation config. So this is the configuration file that we have written. Let's provide that as well. Generation config equals to generation config. Okay, now what we can do is also provide some system instruction. So say for example, you want your model to behave in a certain way, you can provide that instruction over here. So system instruction is something which you like, you want your LLM to behave in a certain way or do a certain kind of task. That's what you need to provide in system instruction. Okay, so if you want, basically you can go and read all the documentations for this Gemini API. I'm not going to that detail because that would basically make this video massive. It's already is gonna be, but yeah, if you are interested to learn more how to basically write a proper system instruction, you can always go back to the examples that people have done. You can go back to the cookbook, Gemini cookbook that they have provided, the Google people have provided, and you can always see. So now we are going to actually use something very straightforward. We are going to just write something, say like just to showcase the building of this chatbot, right? So we are not going to make it very complicated. Let me write: you are a comedian, an experienced comedian. Let's write: you are an experienced comedian. You can make funny jokes about almost anything. Kindly respond to user queries with funny but polite answer. Okay, so this is how we basically kind of initiated the model. So we said like, okay, so you are basically an experienced comedian. You can make funny jokes about almost anything. Kindly respond to user queries with funny but polite answer. So you can write anything here. So just so that you know, you can provide like, say for example, if you want to work with, say, you want to basically generate some content, right? You can say like, okay, you are a so these are just a way of saying like, okay, you are a marketeer or you are a copywriter. Now write me this thing or write me that thing. So you can do it multiple ways, no harm. So yeah. So now our model is ready to be used. Okay, we can use the model. Now, is there anything that we need to do? What we would do here, so you have seen here like people, what they have done is create a chat session and write response, right? What we will do is create a function which takes the user query as an input and provide the text as output. Okay, so why we will do this? Because again, creating a function first makes it more modular, and also by creating a function, we will use that function later in our UI chatbot. Okay, so let's go back to the code. Let's define a small function called let's say Gemini response. Gemini response, and what it takes, it just takes a query, a user query, which can be a string. So you may or may not even actually like typecast that, like provide strictly provide like, okay, the query has to be a string. We are not doing that. And what we do, we basically again, let's go back and see how the documentation says we need to do this. So yeah, so we have already gone to the model. So there needs to be a chat station where model.start chat. History is a list of conversation, and then we can send a particular message over here, right? In response. Okay, let's do that then. Chat station. Let's do, or let's call it something else. Conversation, which makes more sense. Conversation equals to model. So we have obviously already initiated this model, right? So we are just write that model dot start chat. Okay, in start chat, what are the things that goes? There's a history that goes, which is basically, yeah, history is basically a list of conversations that has already happened. So you can write something here, or if it is a news chat, so you can just start it with the empty list. Okay, so you can write it either in as an empty list, or what you can do is provide some input, and usually the how the input happens. So it's basically all these inputs are dictionaries where you have key value pairs. You need to provide the role. Role are usually like whether you are an user or you are basically the assistant, right? And apart from user, you also have to provide the content. So yeah, that's basically these are all dicts that you need to provide. But that is if you want to provide some context to the chatbot. What we want to do is like create a fresh chat. So for that we are gonna use just an empty list. Okay, so conversation it's gonna start, and then we need to get back what the LLM is saying. So the response, and what will be the response in conversation? We can send a message. Yeah, this send message, and here what we will do is right query. Okay, send message query, and then what we need to do is response.text. If I'm not wrong, let's check once again. Yes, so we need to get the response.text. So response.text is the message that the LLM provides. So we will just return that. Return response.text. Great. So now we have a function which takes the query, it sends it to the LLM. So this is how we are actually calling the API, by the way. It's not, it may not be that evident because we are using through the function, but this module itself is basically a wrapper on the API. So when I'm saying like, okay, I am using this particular model, this generation config, this system instruction, and then I'm saying like start a chat, it basically calls the API in the backend. Okay. So this is how we are gonna define the Gemini response, and then we are basically done. Okay, now we just need to, so the LLM side, the backend side is done. Now we have to kind of create the user interface and connect it with how the query is going to go and how the response will come. So now the time for Streamlit. So Streamlit, as I said, Streamlit is a library that we use for data science a lot because it helps to build UI. So usually you need to know HTML, you need to know JavaScript and all different kinds of framework in JavaScript. But usually if you're a data scientist or if you work with data science, or you may not be versed with like all these frameworks and the JavaScript programming language, but if you know Python, that's it. Streamlit is a very useful, easy to use, interactive thing, easy to use thing where you can make interactive dashboards very easily. And Streamlit is something that we are going to use for this chatbot. So what we'll do is also look at the Streamlit documentation. Okay, uh, Streamlit documentation. You should get to like yeah, this the official website. Let's accept the cookies. Okay. Now, what Streamlit does is it obviously will provide all these things, how things need to be worked and everything. Let's go to the chat elements. Okay. So before chat elements, we need to provide some title to the page, right? So this is a user interface, so it needs to have a big title. Like here, it's Streamlit documentation. Similarly, it needs to have a title. So in Streamlit, how you do that is just write st. So you remember we call Streamlit as st, right? St dot title, and we can provide a title here over here. Let's name it our intelligent, funny friend. I'm not sure whether it will be a funny friend or not, but hopefully I have said it to be an experienced comedian. So let's keep our fingers crossed. So our intelligent funny friend. Okay, so this is the title that we are gonna use. Now, what we need to do, we need to see how we need to send messages to Streamlit. So this is the title of the page, the user interface. Now it's just about the messages, how we send something and how to basically show whatever the LLM is responding back to us. That's it, right? Because we have already done the backend part. So let's go to Streamlit documentation. It seems like in the chat elements, they say something called st.chat input, your message, okay. Uh, ST chat input, then ST chat message. There's insert a chat message container to add elements. So you can go through the documentation to understand all the different things that you can do over here. ST.status. So insert a status container. So one of the things that we need to do is also like keep things in the session state. Like it's kind of, it needs to be basically a conversation, right? It doesn't, it won't look good if we just input something and then the LLM, the Gemini responds something, and then when we're gonna input next, the previous things goes away, right? It doesn't look like a conversation then. So we need to make sure of that. So we need to basically keep the chat history to in a way. And there's so many things for its status and stuff like that. Anyway, we actually move from chat element, chat input, st.status, and then st.write stream. So we can also stream the output text. So sometimes what happens is like it may take time to complete the whole message. So we may not want to wait that long, and we may want to like write out anything that the LLM is responding. Uh, let's do that later on. Let's try to first have some response back at least. Okay. So you can go through all the concepts of Streamlit. I'm not going through this right now, but let's start with building the basics. So first that you need to do is like initialize a chat history. Okay. So let me do that. Saying like we will check whether something is in the session state or not. So we will say if message is not in st.session state. Okay. If message is not in st, so what does this mean? This means that there's no message in it. So in that case, what we will gonna do is we are write st dot again session state dot messages uh, messages equals to an empty list. So what did we do here? We just initialize an uh, session chat where we can now input. So this is now empty. So we are just making sure we are doing like we are starting afresh. So you can say like right, initialize chat session. We haven't write a comment. Just write uh, function to generate response from AI or LLM. Anyway, okay, so we have done this. We have initialized the chat session. Now we need to make sure that whenever something comes back, so we need to write those things. Okay, so now what we will do is let's do for message. So messages is basically a list. So we will go in message for message in st dot session state dot messages. So messages is the list, and when I say for loop, so when I basically iterate over it, so I'm getting each individual message over there, right? So when we go there for message, every message, we want to write that message, right? So we'll use with. You may not even use with, by the way, and we will see this st dot chat message. And what we gonna need to write, we need to first of all write who is writing this, right? So the message, so this particular variable, it should have something called role and content. So the role, like role means who is saying it. Role. And inside that, let's do a markdown, write it in markdown, st dot markdown, the content itself. Okay, so that will be under message, and under that it should be content. Okay, so we are going to write. So what's exactly this part is doing? So initially we use this part to initialize the chat session, and now what we are what we have written is to write all the messages. So we will go through all the messages and we need to write them out using the role and content. So role, as I said, role could be either the user, that is you, me, people like us, and the role could be the assistant as well, right? The assistant means the LLM part as well. So it will basically go through all the messages. It will see like, okay, who have said what, and based on the role, it would say like this, those two will be the user and the assistant would be different now. Okay. Now the writing part is also mostly done. So what we need to do is basically connect it with the prompt. So whatever prompt we are providing. So let's write it like this. Uh, if we provide some prompt, and we can like define it in say st.chat input. If I remember, we so chat input is how you input some chat, and you can just write something, a placeholder. As you can see, the first thing is a placeholder. A placeholder is something, even if you want to input the chat, whatever is shown initially, so that's the placeholder. uh, you can say like type your query or something like that, type your query. So this is something that you can see. uh, if statement, we have started with if statement. So if prompt means, so if you find the prompt, and the prompt is, prompt will be assigned as whatever is being inputted, that will be assigned in prompt variable. Okay, so that's what I'm doing over here. We can do a simple assignment, but it's better to like strict assignment like this. So if prompt, so what we are going to need to do, we basically need to append this in the message, because we have already written like for every message we are going to write those messages. So whenever user basically type out any prompt, we just need to put it into the message. Then this part will take care of writing that out, isn't it? So we will just do what? st dot, I put two dot, I guess. Oh, sorry. st dot session state dot messages. If you remember, messages is the list, right? And for a list, we can do an append. And what we will append over here, we will append a simple dictionary where first we should have the role. And what's the role here? So type your query. So this who is writing this query? The user is writing this query, right? So the role will be user. And apart from that, what we want to do is the content as well. So apart from the role, we want to write the content out as well. And what's the content? The content is whatever prompt the user has said, right? So the prompt itself. So do you understand this part? So what we said, like, okay, if prompt session, it just needs to being appended, and we can like have it in markdown as well with st.chat message user, st dot chat message. So basically what it does is create a message container. And so there are two stuff, only two stuff that we are gonna use. One is the chat input and the other is chat message. Chat input is how you are providing an input, and chat message is how you are showing something in the chat box, in the container, right? So chat message can have both the users things as well as the assistants thing. So let's add the user, let's add the prompt thing. So with st.chat message user, uh, st.chat message user, we are done. Write the prompt st. markdown and prompt. Okay. Okay. Now still we have written what user is saying. Now we need to say what the assistant will say. What will the assistant say? With st dot chat message. So st dot chat message, this will be the assistant. The first we have done for the user. Now this is for the assistant. And you can see like how these things goes, right? If you just see the documentation, and if you are writing, if you have already installed the library, most of the case whenever you are writing these functions, the simple usage of that function automatically comes in, right? So as you can see, like the name is user or human, the name could be AI or assistant, things like that. So we are using user and assistant. You can write human AI stuff as well. Uh, Chat versus assistant. So let's actually write AI, because AI sounds more better than assistant. So AI with Chat message AI. What we are gonna do first? We need to get the response. So response will be, what will be the response? No, we will do write first of all, and what we will gonna write? We are gonna write based on whatever the response of this particular function that we have defined, right? So Gemini response, we are gonna call this Gemini response, and what is the input? Here we said like query, right? But at the end it will be the prompt, because the prompt is what the user is providing, right? So we like write, and then with that you just do append again, st dot session state dot messages, and you're gonna append. What you're gonna append? You are gonna append same like this. So it's all in a pattern. You are now understanding the pattern, right? So we will append the first. The role is AI. Uh, Let me back AI, and what will be the content? Will be this response that we got back. So this response that we got back. Okay. So response. Okay. And yeah, that's it. Just these few lines of code to do the all the UI, and hopefully it should work. Now let's see how it works. So usually to run anything you need to like do Python run this, or Python run that, right? Or Python that. So what we will Python and then the file name, how that's how you basically run stuff. So let's first go to the command prompt, okay? And once you're in the command prompt, first clear the screen with CLS. Now for Streamlit, you can directly write Streamlit run and then the application name. What was the application name? We named it app.py, right? If you remember. So the application name is app.py. So we will the what we will write is Streamlit run app.py. Let's see whether it runs successfully or not. If it runs successfully, it should open something on your browser. Your app should be opened up. Okay. So localhost means it's locally running in your browser. It's not available publicly. It's just in your network, and you can see it over here. So it's the local URL. So this HTTP localhost 8501. 8501 is the port. It's locally available, and if you are connected to say a particular network, say for example your Wi-Fi or an Ethernet, so anyone in your network can also access this particular app or the web application. So this is a web application that we built, right? A very simple web application, a web application for the chatbot. Now this is available in your local browser as well as in any computer, laptop which is connected in the network. And for them, you need to share them with this particular link, this thing. Anyway, let's see, and let's test out whether this works or not. Uh, Hi. We just need to. So this is where, and you see, like this is the placeholder. Type your query, that whatever we have written as a placeholder, and we can provide some prompt over here, and then the AI will respond. So let's write. What can I write? Hi, how are you? And how's the weather? I know it's not a very funny question, but let's see whether our AI can make it funny, make it into a funny response. I just write, hi, how are you, and how's the weather? Once you press enter, you see this running thing, right? So, oh, I am doing great. Just trying to avoid the weather. It's a little too sunny for my liking. You know, sunburns, heat stroke, not a good look for a comedian who relies on their face to be funny. What about you? What's the weather like where you are? Hopefully not a hurricane. So this is the AI's way of trying to be funny, and you could write anything and it will happen, right? So this is a conversation, as I said, and we are writing all the messages in the history. So if you write something else like uh, weather over here is dangerous due to rain or due to politics. Let's try something little controversial. Weather over is dangerous due to politics and an exclamation sign. Oh, you are right. The weather's been acting up like a politician trying to explain their voting record. 1 minute it's sunny and bright, the next it's downpour of accusations. Just try to stay dry and maybe grab an umbrella and a good lawyer, just in case. That's great. But now you see, we have probably done something wrong because now this particular thing it's coming as none. If you look into the look here, it's not providing anything. Okay, we are not logging what we are doing. So okay, but the thing is, we have made a simple chatbot that can now have all these things, and you can make a conversation with it, and it's intelligent. It can provide you with answers to whatever you are asking. It can generate something for you. So this is a generative model behind. So it's intelligent, obviously slightly intelligent, and yeah, it's great to use that. Obviously there are so many things that you can do about it. This is just the basics. This is just the tip of the iceberg. You can probably provide a lot more context, a lot more data to do something with those data. You can probably initiate the chat with more strict information about what you need to do, what needs to be done. We can also like do streaming and stuff. Like uh, we can actually like try to be like, okay, why it's if you want to debug like why it's coming as none, you can actually go and see like, okay, how what are the things that are coming in. So you write down some stuff, right? And then provide answers to that and stuff like that. Like you can add a print statement to log like whatever is happening, so that you understand like, okay, whether this is working or not, how is it working, things like that. Okay. Uh, so I think we should end it like here right now because this is just a beginning, and I do not want to like provide you with so many things. Obviously, you can do so. You can go and check the Streamlit documentation. In Streamlit documentation, I guess you would find something for building with something for LLMs. Is it there? First steps, concepts, app testing. Just let's quickly go through all this stuff. Then we would understand tutorials. Yeah, tutorials. There's something called work with LLMs, and yeah, you can have a simple blog like thing where you can go through it. So they are using ChatGPT here. So as a ChatGPT like experience, okay. ChatGPT GUI with streaming. Uh, yeah, so this is the same thing that we have actually done, and they have a video on it as well. Uh, yeah. So same as what we did, like with st.chat message user, you can say like user hi. Then for assistant, you can write something as well. Okay, good. So yeah. So this is funny. And yeah, with st.write. So this is again how we did all this stuff. Hello human, and then they produce a bar chart. Right. Okay, so you can go through it to have a more in-depth. So see here also they are basically doing the prompt, chat input, and then if the prompt is present, then you are writing out. Right. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, so I guess this is more or less done. Let me know how you guys think about this tutorial, whether this is useful or not. So this is kind of end to end, and I tried to showcase every small little bit of nuances as well, so that you understand where things get stuck or what needs to do if you do not remember a syntax, how to search for things, going through a documentation, and working with everything. So I hope this was a good lesson for you guys, and yeah, so hopefully you build something very useful, insightful, and something that basically like helps you in some way or other, right? So let's make a goodbye and see you soon. And if you have any questions, by the way, you can always ask. And let's see whether we will build something out of it. Okay, so we will build something better next time. Thank you. Bye bye. Tata. Have a great day.